What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 Ford Explorer. This is the XLT trim level, which is the base trim, but guys, trust me, this thing looks amazing. It's gone through a little bit of an upgrade as well too from the 2019, which I'm kind of excited about. Now the one behind me, it is powered by a 2.3 liter turbo engine. It gives you 310 horsepower, 300 pounds of torque, and up to 5,300 pound towing capacity if you get it done from the factory. It's also got the capability to have up to 7 people in the vehicle, so up to a 7-seater. So it's perfect for people that have a little bit of a bigger family, or if you got the cargo requirements where you need something just a bit bigger than that Ford Edge. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's take a look at this vehicle, see what it has to offer. Alright, taking a look at the engine of this thing. So as I mentioned, it is powered by a 2.3 liter turbo engine. That's available in the XLT trim. If we look at the ST or a higher trim level like the Platinum, you do have the ability to get a 3 liter twin turbo. But having said that, this thing is still plenty powerful. Couple things, easy access, well, slightly easy access I should say. In the back here, you kind of can reach the dipstick in order to check your oil. It's a little bit inconvenient, especially if you're a little bit of a shorter person. And then off to the left-hand side there, we do have the ability to easily fill up our windshield wiper fluid. Now, filling up the tank on this thing is also very straightforward. Luckily, it is on the driver's side, so easily pull up and you're set to go. In order to fill up, all we're gonna do, we're just gonna push here, pop this open, and as you can see, we've got a capless fuel system. So all you're gonna do, take that hose, put it inside, you're good to go. Now, having said that, the type of gas this thing needs, it is only regular 87 octane, so we can get away with that cheaper gas. You don't have to use the 89 or the 91, but like any vehicle, if you use that higher octane, you'll get slightly better performance, but the recommended is just that 87 octane. All right, so a couple things to point out at the back here. So this one does have the trailer tow package. If you ever think you're gonna be towing something, make sure you get the tow package from the factory. Everything's there the way that you need it. Now, if you do get the trailer tow package from the factory, you're gonna be able to tow up to 5,300 pounds. That's a ton of weight that this thing's gonna be able to pull. If we look up a little bit, this thing does have a backup camera. So we've got the reverse camera here, and it's also got the sensing system. So as you can see, we've got a couple sensors here. So as we come closer to an obstacle behind us, it's going to beep as we get closer to it. All right, looking at the key fob on this thing. So let's take a peek here, focus in. So we've got our unlock button, our lock button, remote start, our trunk release, as well as our horn or our panic alarm button. There is an emergency access key here as well. We're just going to press the button just at the bottom here in order to slide that out. And then all you're gonna do, right back in again. In order to be able to remote start it, very straightforward. You're just gonna hit the lock button once, and then the circle button here twice. So as you can see, really straightforward there, and then same idea, in order to cancel the remote start, all we're gonna do is press this circle button once. Let's cancel the remote start there. In order to be able to open up the trunk on this thing, there's a couple different ways that we can do it. So we can use the key fob here. We're gonna double press this button here. There's also a few ways to do it on the outside. So taking a look, if we wanna open up the trunk without using the key fob, I should say, just underneath here, right by the R in the Explorer, there's a button. We're just gonna press that button and step back because it is a power liftgate. Let's have a little bit of a peek inside. Okay, now looking in the back here, so one of the benefits of the Explorer is that we do have that third row seat. So if you do have more than 5 people that are going to typically be in your car, or if you want to separate people so they don't argue, that back seat here is very, very handy. Now looking here, as you can see, with the seats up, we don't have a ton of space back here, but there still is quite a bit of space. Underneath the tray here, we've got a little bit of storage space. We've got a rear protector there as well. And then underneath here, let's pull this up. We've got our spare tire. So spare tire with the jack underneath, and then looking off to the side, we've got some cubbies on the driver and the passenger side, so we can have a little bit of extra storage space. Now, one of the nice things, this tray also does come out, so you can kind of move it around. You can drop it down into the tray in the back here as well if you need a little bit of extra space. Now looking here, it is very easy to fold the seats down in this thing. Looking at the XLT trim level, it is going to be a manual seat fold for these back seats. But if you look here on the driver and passenger side, we've got these little handles. All we're going to do is just pull that up, It just folds right down, driver and passenger side there. Really straightforward. In order to be able to lift them back up, all we're gonna do, grab this here, pull it back up into place, lock it back into place. Same idea, we can do it on the driver's side. Boom, lock back into place there, and then we do have our headrest there, so we can pop those headrests back up. All right, now one thing to take a look at right here is the spacing in this thing. So I'm personally 6 feet tall, all right? So we're gonna keep that in mind for a second here. I'm sitting all the way back. Now, to be honest, it's a little bit tight back here, but headspace wise, I've got a ton of space. Like, I can sit up fine. I still have about an inch or two overhead. I'm just gonna pull this seat up just so you can see what it's gonna be like. So even with the seat pulled up all the way, I still have about an inch or so of foot room there, or I should say knee room in the back. So if you've got taller passengers, they'll be able to get into that third row seat without a problem. If you've got kids that are under 6 feet tall, they won't have a problem getting in and out in the back here. Looking at the center seats here, so these second row seats, you've got a couple different options. The configuration of the one that we're in right now, it's got the dual captain's chairs. So it's easier to pass through in the back there for people that have to get into those back seats. Now, having said that, if you need that 7-seater, if you really need 7 seats here, there is an option for a bench there. Middle seat is essentially going to be locked into place, but looking here with the dual captain's chairs, and even in that 3-seat here, so when we get the bench seat, we've got the ability to move the seat forwards and backwards. So if you have somebody that's a little bit taller in the back there, you can give them a little bit more leg room. Sliding it back here all the way, from a headspace perspective, same thing. I've got about an inch and a half roughly in headspace here. Now the seat itself, you can't move it down, but you can adjust the backrest. All we're gonna do is just pull this lever up and then slide it back and forward here, so you got a little bit more comfort for folks that are in the middle row seat here. Now one of the cool things is that this thing also does have heated seats in the back seats here. And that's going to be controlled just using the buttons over on the center console here. So let's zoom in so you can take a peek. So a couple of things to point out. So you do have the capability for the folks that are in the back seat, they do have climate control. So they can control the fan speed, they can control whether it's hot or cold, you can turn it on or off, and then they can also adjust whether it's going to their feet or to their face. Turning on the heated seats in the back here for the dual captain's chairs, we're just going to press the heat button there, and that's going to warm them up nice and toasty in the winter time. In the back here, we've also got a USB port. So we've got our traditional USB as well as our USB-C, so that smaller one that you can plug in if people need to charge up their technology on the go. Off to the side here, we also do have a traditional cigarette lighter adapter. Plug in and you're set to go. And the one other thing is there is a little bit of storage space back here. So if you do have somebody that needs to toss in a little bit of extra change, some snacks maybe, you can keep them in the back here. And one other thing to point out, when we do get the dual captain's chairs, there is a little console in the center here that does have some cup holders. So if you have people that have drinks, you've got the capability to be able to stick them somewhere rather than them falling all over the place. One other thing to point out in the back, you do have pockets in the back here as well, if you need a little bit of extra storage space. Looking at the driver's side door here, at the very top, we've got our unlock as well as our lock buttons. Moving down a bit, we've got this button here, which is essentially going to kill off the power to those back windows. So if you've got a child with sticky fingers, likes to play with them a little bit, or a pet that knows what they're doing, you do have the ability to lock it out so that they can't roll the windows up or down. Moving down here, we've got the ability to adjust our side view mirrors, whatever one is lit up. So you're going to press the button, whatever's lit up, that's the mirror you're going to be adjusting. And then we're just going to use this pad here in order to be able to adjust that side view mirror to our liking. Okay, adjusting the driver's seat is very, very simple. All we're going to do along our left-hand side, so left-hand side of the driver, right-hand side of the passenger, we can use these knobs here in order to be able to adjust the driver's seat. So what we're going to do, this first stick here, if we move it forward, we're literally going to move the seat forward there. We can move the seat backwards. If you need to get a little bit higher up, you're just going to take that stick and lift it up. Try to lift the seat up, or we can push it down in order to lower the seat back down. Adjusting the backrest here is also power, so we're going to put this back, or we can pull it forward, again, just depending on your own personal preference. This last one here is going to be for our power lumbar support. So it's really, really good for our lower back, especially if you've got lower back problems. Gives you a little bit more stability for those distance drives. In order to adjust our steering wheel, so it is a manual adjust. If we look by our left knee here, as you can see, there's a little lever. We're just going to crank that lever down, We're going to move the steering wheel. It's telescopic, so move it in, out, up, down, etc. to your liking. Once you've got that perfect position, you're going to take that lever, lock it back up into place, you're set to go. Along the side here, as you can see, we've got a series of different buttons. So the very first one here is going to be our trunk release. So we're going to press this button here if we want to be able to open up that trunk. Just another way to do it. So we've got the button, our key fob, or from the inside here. Looking here, so we've got our light button here. So there's really only two settings that I think you should be concerned about. We've got our middle one here as well as the very top one. So the very top one is going to turn the lights off. That means that they're not going to be going whatsoever. However, if we go down to our A button there, that's the auto lamps. It means it's automatically going to turn the headlights on or off as necessary. So it's going to switch between those daytime or the nighttime running lamps. You don't have to do anything. So I do recommend keeping it on that auto setting. Just off to the right-hand side here, we've got a plus and minus button there. That's going to be our screen dimmer, so we can make the screen darker or lighter to your personal preference there. Now this is the screen that we're going to be met with when the vehicle's first turned on. So a couple things to point out. This one doesn't have the built-in navigation. So that's why we're missing the navigation from here. Now if we do have navigation, the button will show up here, and then the map will essentially be here. So it's essentially like a little hotkey there. But looking at the one that doesn't have the factory nav, do you need it? Not necessarily. Now, there's benefits and downsides. A benefit to having the factory navigation, if you're going across the country, or if you're going to different countries, I should say, so Canada, the US, etc., you're not going to use up your data plan on your phone. So that is one of the benefits. You also do have the capabilities. This thing does have Sync 3, which gives you the Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So if you use the Waze app or Google Maps or whatever the case may be, you can mirror that map directly onto your screen here. So it really is a matter of personal preference. When it comes to the bottom, starting off on audio here, we can choose between our different sources, so AM, FM, Sirius, Bluetooth, etc. If our phone was connected, it would also show up just in this center box here. Moving back here, now as you can see, we can tune a couple different ways. So we can either manually type in the station that we want to tune to, so it's changed to the station there. We can manually tune using a knob down here, or we can use the voice button on the steering wheel in order to be able to tune that way as well. Now, in order to be able to save one of a preset, what we're going to do is tune to the station that you want to save. Once you're tuned to that station, all you're going to do is press and hold. And as you can see, that preset's now saved. So it's really, really simple. Jumping into our phone here, so as you can see, there's no phone connected. To set up a phone, it's actually really, really simple. All we're going to do, starting off on your cell phone here, so this is an iPhone. It does work the same way for Android as well. Actually, let me make that screen a little bit brighter for you there. There we go. So all we're going to do is turn our Bluetooth on. When the Bluetooth is on, we're just going to press the Add Phone button here.
Search for your vehicle on your device and select it once it is found.
Okay, and then in a few seconds, you are going to see, there we go, so Ford Explorer is showing up there. So all we're going to do is press that Ford Explorer button and give it a moment.
Confirm that the pin displayed on sync matches the pin displayed on your device.
And all we're doing, guys, is just following the directions. So it's 130850, so the pins do match up, so we can say pair and yes.
For your safety, please stay alert to changing road conditions and use Sync's voice-activated features while your vehicle is in motion.
There we go. And on our phone now, do we want to allow contacts and favorites? Yes, we do. And now the phone is done here. Couple things to point out on the screen here now. So 911 assist, we want to turn that one on. That's only going to work whenever the vehicle, or whenever your phone, I should say, is connected to the vehicle. And then automatically download our contacts. We absolutely want to do that. We're connecting our phone for a reason, and that's to be able to go hands-free. So we're just going to hit finish there, and then as you can see, it's saved it's got all my phone settings, my recent calls, contacts, my iPhone. You can change phones if you have multiple phones connected. We can look at my text messages and all that fun stuff. So it's really, really neat. Now, if we jump into apps, there are certain apps that can work through the vehicle here. So one of them is LiveX Live or Spotify, so they're different radio apps. Or if you have the Waze app, you can also use that on the center console screen here. Android Auto works over Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay. You do physically have to be connected in order for that to work, but it essentially mirrors the screen onto this center console screen here. In order to be able to delete the phone now, it's really straightforward. We're just going to go into our phone settings here, and then we've got some options. We can view devices, text messaging, we can change the ringtone. If we go view devices, it'll show all of the devices that are currently connected. We're going to click on my phone here. We can either disconnect it or we can remove it completely. So if we go remove and yes, it's removed my phone. Jumping back into phone here, as you can see, it's now gone. So it's really straightforward. Moving back into our settings here, we've got a ton of options, so let's go through it. Starting off with our sound here, we can change the treble, mid-range, bass, balance, all that fun stuff. Next up, we're going to look at our clock settings. So clock by default is going to be military time, and this is actually behind an hour, so we're now at the correct time here, and we can go either AM or PM. So obviously we can shake it up there, but if you prefer that military time, so the 24-hour time, we're just going to hit this here, and then as you can see, it's updated to military time, or we can switch back to that typical 12-hour time mode instead. Jumping back here, we've now got Bluetooth. So Bluetooth, we can either turn that on or off. We can add a Bluetooth-enabled device, whether that's another cell phone or a Bluetooth-enabled MP3 player. Jumping back into our phone, so we'd go there in order to be able to connect a phone again. We can also go down here to do the same thing. Radio, we've got some options here. We've got the radio text, and the presets are the big one. So our preset pages, as a default, is going to be set to 2. We can go up to 6 with 5 on each page, which gives us up to 30 different presets. So if you're the type of person where you love to have a bunch of presets, you can tweak it, and you can have up to 30 here. And all you have to do is, again, press and hold once you're tuned to the station, whether that's Sirius XM, AM, FM, etc. And then the radio text is going to be this text here. So when there's a song that's playing, it's going to show whatever song is playing here. Again, personal preference, whether or not that shows. Moving into our driver assistance settings here. So there are a ton of options here as well. Firstly is going to be lane keeping system. There's 2 different things that we can do. It's either going to be a center, so an alert or an aid. So the alert is going to be a steering wheel shake. So what it'll do is if the vehicle recognizes that we're moving into a lane without signaling, it'll shake the steering wheel. The aid is going to recenter us and pull us back into our lane. And then the alert and the aid is going to do both. So it'll pull us back into our lane while giving us a little steering wheel shake. Moving back here, we can change the intensity of that shake. So it can either be a high shake. So it's fairly high there, or a little bit more of a moderate shake. The best way for me to describe the feeling, imagine going over those bumpy roads as you're starting to veer over onto the shoulder. That's essentially the way that it's going to feel. So it's going to essentially wake you up and jolt you up there. Moving into our pre-collision assist, we've got active braking now. So one of the benefits of having that system on is if the vehicle senses a potential collision and you haven't responded, it's automatically going to brake for you. I do recommend keeping that one on. This is going to be the sensitivity. So how close is a vehicle going to be before it'll automatically start to brake for you? And we've got our blind spot system here. So the blind spot system, let's move over for a second here, and you see that little guy right there. So that's going to highlight and that'll turn orange when somebody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. So again, you can turn that one off if you don't want to have it, but realistically, there's no reason not to. Now, as I mentioned, this one does have the trailer tow package here, and in order to be able to turn that trailer tow blind spot on, it's really, really neat. All we're going to do is set our trailer length. Now, that blind spot system, when we have our trailer length inputted, it's going to automatically extend that blind spot system. So rather than going back to the rear of our vehicle, it's going to take our trailer into account. So if somebody's entered the blind spot, even in the length of the trailer, that orange light is going to highlight, letting you know that there's somebody there, helping you avoid a potential collision. Trailer sway control, again, as long as you've got that trailer tow package, this will show up. If you don't, it's not going to be there. We've got our parking aid, which again is that reverse sensing system, so we can turn that beeping off if you're not a fan of it. Cross traffic alert. If we've got a vehicle that's coming perpendicular, so either to our left or our right side, whether you see the vehicle or not, we're going to get an audible alert letting us know that there's a potential collision. So it's just one of the added safety features that Ford has on the vehicle. Next up is going to be our driver alert. So that one there is tied into our lane keeping system. So if we get too many warnings, then there's going to be a message letting us know that you should probably take a rest. Looking at our vehicle settings next up. There we go. So we've got our 30-minute max idle. So if the vehicle's on, it's automatically going to turn off after 30 minutes, or we can turn that off and it'll just stay on. My Key essentially gives you the ability to control certain aspects of the vehicle with a certain key fob. Where that comes into play is, let's say if you've got a young driver or you want to pull a prank and you don't want people to go past a certain speed, you can lock it so that when a certain key fob is used, a person can only go a certain speed, or the radio won't play past a certain volume. There's a ton of options. It's really, really straightforward in order to create the My Key here as well. We can take a look now at the remote start. We can turn the remote start off completely if we want to. We can also adjust climate control. So when it's remote started, what happens with the climate control? It's either auto, so the vehicle is going to determine what the cabin temperature should be, or we can go to our last settings. So when the vehicle was last turned off, what did you have the settings at? So it's really a matter of personal preference there. Seats and wheel, will the heated seats come on as well? Again, matter of personal preference. And then the duration of the remote start is going to be for 5, 10, or 15 minutes. Moving down, now we've got some options for our wipers, so a courtesy wipe or the reverse wiper. We obviously want to make sure that our reverse wiper stays on, and that's going to be just this button just right off to the right-hand stick here. So reverse wiper, let's make sure that we keep that on. The courtesy wipe, when the vehicle's turned on, it's going to wipe once. I don't recommend having that one on, especially if you live in a climate with ice. And the reason why is because if there's ice buildup and that motor starts going, you could potentially damage something. Next up, we've got our powered liftgate. So powered liftgate, we can either enable or disable the switch, which is going to be in the outside of the vehicle there. There still are a few ways to open that one up using our key fob or directly on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. We've got our lighting now, so auto high beams, I 100% recommend keeping that one on. So rather than flipping the stick on the driver's side here, on the left-hand stick I should say, with auto high beam enabled, it's automatically going to turn the high beams on, it's going to turn them off, it's going to dim them as necessary. So the vehicle does the work for you for the high beams rather than you having to worry about doing it yourself. Our locks here, so there is the ability to... Oh, I'm thinking about the door keypad lock. All right, so if we look at the lock here, auto unlock as it senses the key, it'll automatically unlock the vehicle for you. So the switch inhibitor as well, if the vehicle's locked, or I should say if the vehicle's on and you have the key fob in your pocket, you walk away, it'll automatically lock the vehicle. But the switch inhibitor, essentially what that does is it's going to also lock the vehicle so that someone just can't get in and drive away. So I 100% recommend keeping all these settings on. And then with the remote unlock, when that happens, is it all doors that got unlocked or is it just the driver's door? Again, it's a matter of personal preference there. This is the one I was thinking of, the door keypad code. So you can get into the vehicle. There's as I pointed out earlier, there is the ability to do that on the driver's side door. 5-digit factory combination, so you can add a number of different ones in as well. So if you've got a 5-digit code that you've got instead that you'd prefer, you can add that one in here as well. You can either add it in on the inside here or on the outside on the door. And that is going to be our vehicle settings here. Jumping out, our Ford Pass Connect. So the vehicle is enabled with an onboard modem. You can connect up to 10 devices. You do need to have a data plan in order for that to work. When you purchase a Ford vehicle or a Lincoln vehicle, you get 3 months, up to 3 gigs of data for free. In Canada, that's on the Bell network. In the US, I believe it's on Sprint. So you have to sign up for a data-only plan through one of those providers. Moving over, we've got some Wi-Fi settings as well. So Wi-Fi, we can connect to a Wi-Fi at home. The benefit of doing that is that when we're connected to Wi-Fi at home, it's automatically going to be able to update the vehicle if we've got our auto updates turned on. So I do recommend doing that. It's automatically going to update the software and the firmware in the vehicle. If yours comes with the navigation, unfortunately, it's not going to upgrade the maps. You have to either get your service technician to do that for you, or you can manually download the update, and then you can just stick it into the USB port here in order to update. Moving into our general settings, that's going to give us the ability to change languages, whether that's English, Spanish, or French. Again, personal preference. Into our temperature units, we can go either Celsius or Fahrenheit. Measurements, we can go kilometers or miles per hour. We can change out the tire pressure, that beep that we're getting here. So we can turn that beep off if we want to, just by pressing this here. So again, that's really a matter of personal preference, whether or not you want that beep. It's up to you. We can do, again, turning the automatic system updates on from this part as well. I do recommend keeping that one on. Make sure you're connected to Wi-Fi at home so that your vehicle is always up to date. Last one at the bottom here is going to be our master reset. That's really the big one here. So if the screen is being glitchy or if you're selling the vehicle, do a master reset. It wipes all the data and it resets it to factory defaults. 911 assist, as I mentioned, your phone does need to be connected in order for that to work. Mobile apps, same idea. Mobile app, your phone needs to be connected for the mobile apps to work. Our display, we've got some options here as well, so we can turn the display off. Press it in order for it to come back on again, or we can have a different type of screen, so a calming screen again. Same idea, press it in order for the screen to come back to life again. There we go. Let's jump back into settings and off to the side. Right where we were there, perfect. And then a few other things. We can change the background if you want to use a different image, or we can tweak the mode. So we're in the daytime mode right now, or you can have the nighttime mode permanently. It's really a matter of personal preference, but I love the look of this blue one. So I personally make sure that it's always in this blue mode. When it's in auto, it's automatically going to change it from the daytime or the nighttime mode, obviously just depending on the time of day. Perfect. And then we've got two more here. So our voice control, we've got an advanced mode. So I'm just going to press the voice control button on the steering wheel. I want you to listen here. Tune to 94.9.
Tuning to FM 94.9.
So if you heard there was a little message letting us know what station it was tuning to. Now, if we turn the advanced mode on, let's do the same thing. Let's change to a different station now. Tune to 97.7. So as you can see, it's changed stations, just so I can show you here. It's changed to that other station, and it didn't give us that extra voice prompt. So I do recommend keeping the advanced mode on. You essentially won't get as many messages from the computer here. Phone confirmation is, do you want to call this person when you place a call? Yes or no. I do recommend keeping that one on. And then our voice command list is this list here. So when we press that voice control button, this is our command list. So it essentially gives us the ability to see some of the things that we can do on the vehicle. Last one here is going to be our valet mode. So if you ever use a valet driver, if your phone's connected, they can look through your contacts, messages, things like that. So what I recommend doing is if you ever have a valet driver, or even for general safety, just lock the screen out. All you're going to do is press yes, enter a 4-digit combination. Don't use 0000, use something a little bit more difficult, but as you can see there, it's locked the screen out. So now all of a sudden, people can't look through that center console screen. If you turn the vehicle off and back on, you still can't get in. You're gonna have to enter that 4-digit number again in order for it to come back on. And that's going to be this center screen here in a nutshell. Let's start and look down at the console screen here. Okay, and looking down the console screen here, so as we drop down, very left-hand side here, we've got our ability to turn the audio on or off from here. And we can crank the volume from here. So the speaker system in this thing, as a default, it actually is pretty powerful. It sounds really, really good. From here, we've got the ability to change stations, or if our phone's connected, we can change songs, press and hold in order to seek or skip through part of the song. At the top here, we've got our hazard lights, or 4 ways. We can also manually tune using this knob here. Or you can use the voice command button on the steering wheel. If you're by yourself, use the voice command button. It works extremely well. You can use that manual tuning here if you've got a fussy passenger, or on the audio screen, you can direct tune that way as well. Moving down, now as a default, if we look at the base level of the XLT, it's not going to have heated seats. You do need the cold weather pack, but the cold weather pack does give you heated seats on the driver and passenger side, as well as in the rear seat, so that second row seat, I should say, and it also does give you a heated steering wheel. So if you don't have that cold weather pack in the XLT, you won't see these buttons here. Moving up here, so we've now got our ability to control what we're looking at here for the fan. So we've got our max windshield defroster. We've got the ability to change where the air is going to now. So we press that button there, and then as you can see, it pops it up in that center console screen here. So we can go either to the windshield, to our face, or down to our feet. We've got our power button here, so that's going to turn the system on or off. We've got our air conditioning, our max air conditioning, and then we're dual zone climate control. So if you've got somebody that prefers to have a little bit warmer or a little bit colder on that passenger side, you've got the ability to now do that. We can also go auto, so the vehicle is automatically going to determine what the cabin temperature should be. We've got our rear window defroster. We've got our basic menu here, which again gives us some more options, as well as that dual button here. So I want to show you something for a second. So let's say if we're at the driver and passenger side are different. So our driver's side is super cold, passenger side's a little bit warmer here. If we pull that menu up here, we've got that dual button. Now if we press the dual button, so it essentially is going to default to whatever the driver's side is set up to. This one here is going to be our air circulation button, so it's automatically going to circulate the air if it's on or off. So with that circulation button, it's going to circulate the cabin air, versus if it's off, it's going to pull air from outside of the vehicle. So again, it's really a matter of personal preference there. And then we've got our rear climate settings here. So if you don't want people on the back to be able to control the settings, we can lock it out completely. We can turn that off or on from here as well. And then from here, we've got our fan speed control. So how fast or how intense is that fan going to be here? Moving down a tiny little bit now. So we've got this little console here. So we're just going to press this here. And then as you can see, we've got a little bit of space for a phone. We've got a traditional, so cigarette lighter adapter, as well as a few USB ports. So again, we've got the regular port as well as the smaller lightning port as well. Now, Ford did think technology through as they built this thing, so you can either drop your phone in here, we're going to push and lock that down, or you can have it set up here. So if you tend to run off of your phone for GPS and things like that, this is a safety thing so that your phone has somewhere to sit. Moving down a tiny little bit here, so a couple things to point out. So we've got our cup holders here, and from here we've got the ability to change our drive mode. So we've got a few different options there. So if we twist, we've got our regular normal mode, we've got our eco mode, sport, tow, and then moving back the other direction, so we go back to our normal, then we've got slippery as well as our trail and our deep snow and sand. Scroll down just a tiny little bit more. All right, so looking down here now, we've got a couple more things. We've got our hill descent control. So that essentially is going to keep the vehicle at about 5 kilometers an hour as you're going down a steep hill. So you really only have to worry about cranking the steering wheel. From here, we've got our traction control button, and this is going to be our auto start stop. So as a default, every time you turn the vehicle off, this is going to turn back off. You need to, if you don't like your engine stopping when you're at a light, you just have to make sure you press this button here so it'll turn it off. Moving up here, this is going to be our auto hold button. So with auto hold on, if we're stopped completely and we take our foot off the brake, it's going to hold the car in place. From here, we've got our parking brake. So we're going to lift up in order to turn the parking brake on. To turn the parking brake off, you're going to make sure that the brake is pressed, and then you're going to push the switch down. From here, we've also got the ability to switch. So now we've got our rotary dial. So we've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, or that manual mode. So manual mode, you do have the ability to use the paddle shifters on the steering wheel with a little bit more precision by doing that. Whew. All right, now time for the fun part. Let's take this thing for a spin, see how it is. Here we go. All right, and we're off. So this is the XLT trim level of the vehicle. So it's going to have a 2.3 liter turbo engine. Now, realistically, if you look at the previous generation, the 2019, it's got two engine choices. It's either got a 2.3 liter turbo or a 3.5 liter 6-cylinder naturally aspirated, so a non-turboed engine. I'm curious because in the 2020, they've gotten rid of that 3.5 liter option, and even looking like across the board, when you get into the ST or the Platinum, it's got a 3 liter twin turbo instead. So that naturally aspirated 3.5 liter engine just doesn't exist anymore. So I'm curious, with the engine being as small as it is, what this thing's gonna be like, A, on the highway, I guess B, just general city driving, because that 2.3 liter engine, you're gonna get better gas mileage out of it. It's a curious decision by Ford, that's for sure. There we go, got some AC going. I do love the new look though. So it's gone through a little bit of a facelift on the inside, nothing too crazy, just a little bit of a change. I like how the driving mode selector is here now in comparison to the 2019, I should say. So things are a little bit different in the 2019 compared to the 20. Got power though, okay. Especially for a big vehicle. I'm actually kind of surprised, like a big SUV being able to put out some power like this. Now this is a little bit of a bigger vehicle than what I'm used to driving myself, but realistically it's ultimately going to come down to what are your needs, and that's really across the board. Like, what vehicle should you choose? It's based off of what your needs are. As if your needs are, you need to fit 6 people in the vehicle, this is going to be a good option because you've got the ability to have either a 6 or a 7-seater, just depending on what you do with that middle seat there, whether you decide to go with the bench seat versus the dual captain's chairs. But it's surprisingly comfortable. So this is the XLT trim level, but there is the upgrade to the ActiveX package, the 202 package, which gives us the ActiveX seats. So it's not a true leather seat, it's a pleather seat, let's call it the way it is. Ford's branded it as their ActiveX material. But it's really comfortable. Really, really comfortable. By default, I want to rest my hand where a gear shift would be, and unfortunately it's just not there. We've got the rotary dial here instead. That does take a little bit of getting used to, especially if you're used to having your hand resting on something. Not saying it's not comfortable, it's super comfortable, which is kind of nice. Looks like I'm probably going to get stuck at some lights and yeah, this light and the next light. Ah, well, that's all right. It's part of it. It's nice and comfortable going over bumps. Styling of it's really nice. Let's have a quick peek around. So we've got our drive modes here. I do have the auto engine start stop. It's currently, the system is turned on. However, it's not enabled, it's enabled, I should say. It's just not turned on right now. So the car essentially is going to determine when it turns on and when it turns off at a light. But if we look down here, we can turn it off permanently. But again, that's really just a matter of preference. So as you can see on the screen there, so when we deactivate it by the switch, so a couple things, I'm gonna make sure my lane keeping system's on, and I've also got, let's see, driver assistance. I believe I've got it, yeah, so I've got it set to the alert and the aid. That's perfect. It's exactly what I want to do right now. So I do, as I'm on the highway here, I want to get a feeling for what it's like in a bigger vehicle like this and see how that lane correcting system works. So that lane centering system. Should be interesting. For it being like a bigger vehicle, like, I don't feel like I'm not in control. And you're sitting up higher, which is really nice, like especially if you compare it to the Escape or the Edge. Like, they're SUVs, but at the same time, it's a compact SUV. This is definitely a full size, and it feels great. Obviously not as big as the Expedition, but at the same time, okay, here we go. Pulling up to highway speed. Let's see how it handles. Wow. Wow. Okay. That's surprising. All right, for a 2.3 liter, that was really, really surprising. It's really comfortable. Wow. All right, I'm just going to cross over into this lane here. And here we go. All right, so the lane keeping system works just as well as I was hoping it would. So it did. The lane itself, it highlights yellow, and then as you start to veer over, it does. It corrects you and it pulls you back into that lane. It recenters you into your lane, which is great. Now this vehicle is smart as well. If you're jerking out of the way in order to avoid a collision, it's not going to recenter you and pull you back in and get you into a collision. It's a smart vehicle like that. Safety settings. Crazy. Wow. This is surprisingly nice. So if you need that 7-seater and you don't want to go for something as big as the Expedition, this is a good option. But again, it's going to depend on what your needs are, because maybe you do need that extra size and you need to look at either the Navigator, or maybe you need to look at the Expedition instead. You've got some choices. But really, even if you're looking like if you only need a 4-seater, like maybe you only have 1 or 2 kids, but you need extra trunk space. Maybe it's because they've got a ton of hockey equipment, or maybe you go on family trips frequently and you need that extra space. Knowing that you've got some good gas mileage in this thing, it's a comfortable ride. So I'd say it's a pretty good option. Looking at the Edge is, don't get me wrong, it's a great vehicle. But at the same time, if you need something that's just a little bit bigger, I definitely recommend looking at the Explorer here. And for a vehicle this size, like it averages about 10.3 liters per 100. So it's fairly fuel efficient for its size, and it's got that power to boot with that smaller engine. Good job. Good job, Ford. Let's wait. I like that. People start speeding up when they see somebody about to turn. They're like, no, you're not going to be able to turn before I go straight through the intersection. Love it. Love people sometimes. Ooh, brakes are nice and responsive. You can definitely hear that turbo whine. So as we start to spool up, if you've got your foot down a little bit more, you can absolutely hear that turbo kicking in. I'm not saying it's a terrible sound. It sounds great. And it's really responsive too. Surprisingly responsive. Well, same thing. I've been stopped a couple times and that auto start stop, it still hasn't kicked in. Right, it does happen when the car decides that it happens. It's not up to you whatsoever. Go. All right, guys, well, that was the full review, the overview of the 2020 Ford Explorer. I hope you learned a little bit. I hope you had a little bit of fun. Please, if you have some questions, ask them down below. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me grow, and it helps me know that you guys are enjoying these videos. If you have any questions, like I said, ask them. If it's about what trim level should I get, what about packages, maybe you want some tips and suggestions on how to negotiate with a dealer, ask them down below. But until I see you next time, stay safe. Right, there we go. Let's get this thing parked again. Oh, there's that cross traffic alert. There we go. And that's good. You guys can go now, it's okay.